Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is going to be the beginning, the introduction to my 121st Journey series video. But also, I thought I would put it here today on my video. Today is September 13th, so my video tomorrow on my Pockets of the Future channel. I don't know why, but it's going to go with some other things that are happening in the world, I guess, as well as, my journey, like my personal feelings about things and spiritual experience with them. I went to bed last night. My wife had sent me a meme, like a tweet, a picture of a tweet where somebody said that Aaron Rodgers was going to rupture his Achilles tendon, and it was happened 2.5 hours before it actually happened. 2.5 hours before it actually happened. And I went and I found the tweet, I think, and it seems like it might be legit. And then I woke up this morning and YouTube had recommended a video by Dr. Berg that had said, he's being censored for medical misinformation, that they are not necessarily deleting his videos or banning him or giving him strikes. They're just taking the algorithms and keeping people from finding, which has happened to me on this my channel in different ways. The making YouTube just go to the official story more and more, and making it harder and harder to find the unofficial story. And I'll come back to these things because I'll show you these things in a moment. For those of you watching my regular video. But for those of you who are watching the Journey series, I want to talk about the spiritual aspect of this. So this is, just one narration where it's going to be sort of a combination of the two ideas. It's a starting point for both of these videos. And then after I do this voiceover, the videos will go in different directions. One will be more about the normal things I cover here. One will be more about the spiritual. I have become more and more disillusioned by humanity. There isn't pathways that I can see for success. That doesn't mean that they don't exist, but it's harder and harder to see them with everything that's happened. For me, it starts with the collapse of the Heartfulness organization and the current master and president of the system, and the reaction by the people that have done the meditation. For years, people I knew, people who I had, high opinions of. There are a lot of saints. I mean, real saints, like people, not just, oh, that person's a saint kind of thing, but no, real saints, like higher developed souls, doing Sajmark, the meditation that I do. And for you guys, it's just someone talking about it, but for me, I experienced it, right? When Sahaj Marg found me, when the practice found me, this meditation transmission, it was so transformational. I was 29 years old, and I had really no purpose. Like, I didn't know why I was here. It wasn't to be a successful American person, right? Fame, fortune, or just, live a normal life or whatever it might be. Whatever, motivation that other people had for getting up in the morning, even as a kid, I didn't have, right? There was a time where, like, I had a vivid imagination. As a kid, I was really imaginative. Like, I could daydream and dream. I spent a lot of my time daydreaming in school and, whatever it was, right? But I'm a person who has always had a very vivid imagination. And when I started to play basketball, I imagined being successful, playing Division I basketball and then going to the NBA and, having those moments of success and whatever. And it wasn't realistic because basketball was a lot of times boring for me. Like I put in the work, the working on my game or whatever, but, not like you see professional basketball players do. it didn't mean that much to me. Some days I didn't feel like playing at all, and these things. But my imagination allowed me to believe that I would have some sort of um, life like a famous athlete, and because I had athletic ability and I was good when I was good. At the days I was good. But other days I didn't care and whatever. It wasn't realistic. And as I got older, of course that didn't happen, and I could see that it wasn't really did suit me, and I didn't have any motivation to be successful and do things to be successful. Like I just didn't, and I like people fantasize about, all right, I'm going to get this job, and then and this is the way it's going to go, or I'm going to get married, and this is the way it's going to go, and imagine like a dream life, a fairy tale life, just like you go into it with this fantasy of how it was going to be, right? You see fairy tales and you see movies and happy endings and things, and and you are this is how you imagine that your marriage is going to be, and this your career is going to be, right? And even if you get the fairy tale, even if you get bliss, right? You get some sort of blissful life where everything goes your way, all the breaks break your way, all the luck is on your side. There's still going to be an emptiness because that's not why you're here on planet Earth. It's not to have a happy life. And that's what's sold to you in our system. That happiness is, the pursuit of happiness. It's written in our Constitution. And for this system to work, the idea is that you're constantly pursuing happiness. That you never get it. It's like the rabbits chasing the greyhounds chasing the rabbit. You're never supposed to catch the happiness. It's just out there in front of you, but it keeps you working. You're working for happiness, and then you're like, well, I'm not happy, but I'll make sure my kids have a happy life, right? And let's say you achieve fame and fortune, and whatever it is that you get the you get the dream, and you achieve that dream. There's emptiness inside of you because your soul is here for a different reason. You're not here just to enjoy yourself. Like enjoyment isn't the goal of human life. Happiness isn't the goal of human life. In fact, I've said this so much. The only way you can experience happiness is to have misery. You have to have some opposite. Like all these things come in a binary opposite pairs. Pain and pleasure, right, are opposites. Happiness and sadness are opposites. Things like this. Happiness and depression. You have these different conditions. And the only way to experience one is to have the other. Like the best time to drink water or anything else is when you're really thirsty, right? The best time to enjoy food is when you're really hungry. Like you have to have deprivation to have abundance, right? Like people who grew up in poverty really enjoy wealth because they appreciate, something that other people just take for granted because people who were born into wealth don't appreciate it because they hadn't had the opposite. And so any of these types of things, you have to have one to get the other. So you're always going to be in a state of misery and then happiness. You're going to be depressed and then happy and all these things, right? Someone who's happy all the time, it's just normal and they don't know anything else. People who have more serotonin than the average person and just feel happy all the time. That's just their natural state. And it's the same thing when you become a saint or a spiritual person. You're connected to God all the time, and the connection is permanent. You're not going back and forth, right? I was in a relationship where there was, constant drama. Like I had a couple relationships, but this was before I was married to my, ex, which was a nightmare in itself, right? But I had a relationship with somebody who, we were always in a state of sort of breaking up and chaos and then coming back together. And it was exciting because of that, right? Because, it was always, there's these relationships you have with like crazy people. And they're exciting because, when people have fights and then they come back together and they have a makeup kind of situation, and there's intensity in all that, right? There's energy and excitement in it, and then feelings of like depression and negativity and just and then feeling good and then feeling bad and then feeling good. These things, extremes. Except it's not sustainable. It isn't a healthy relationship. It's just something that there's a lot of energy in it because of the chaos and the constant riding a roller coaster. But I kind of knew early on that all this stuff wasn't why I was here. That there was some other reason, and it was a spiritual reason that I found when I started Sajmark. That whether I was supposed to be rich and famous or successful or not, whether I was going to be this or that or whatever I was going to experience in terms of my relationships with other people, my marriage, my other things like this, that was things I was just going to have to go through, good or bad, right? If I had a bad situation, I had to just suck it up and deal with it. If I had a good situation, the same thing. But I had a spiritual goal. Like in that, there was a spiritual goal. That was something beyond planet Earth. That my life being lived here was something that was, being lived on a spiritual realm of existence. Like if you were playing a video game, you enter into the video game, and it could be, better graphics, better, the video games that I played when I was a kid. And there was a game called Pong that was basically like ping pong and really remedial games. And then my wife and I talk about these video games. You would be in the game, right? It didn't matter how sophisticated the games are now or how primitive they were when I was a kid. You leave your physical life and you enter into the world of the video game, and you have an avatar. And that avatar is, your life. You experience it, and then you die, and then you're like, well, all right. And you go back into the video game. And you're, managing your avatar. And that's what your soul is doing with your life. While you're doing that with the video game, your soul is doing that with your life, right? Your soul has created this physical life, but it's an illusionary experience. And your soul has a goal. Your soul has a purpose for your life. And whatever that is, it isn't about happiness and enjoyment. Like those are things that you experience along the path, and they're good, and they're part of the path, but they're not the goal, right? They're not the solution. And I started Sajmark and I felt the transmission, like I knew that was why I was here. And the transmission is, and for those of you who don't understand the system, it's it's a divine energy that is passed through the hearts of either the master of the system or preceptors that act as conduits for this divine energy. And people experience divine love in their life, and it's not exactly like that. But, when you experience love, that's God. And you have those moments where you experience it, and you attribute it to people and the situation in your existence, right? You attribute it to something in your life. And that's where the love's coming from, right? You love somebody, they love you, there's that kind of love, and there's, love that you experience just, the love of art, like the love of doing your job, the love of, there's different forms of love. I mean, it's the same love, but it's comes through different forms, right? But in terms of the purity of the love, it's divine. And your soul needs that love. You need love to exist. And some people lose all their love. Like you were born with so much love in your system, and it gets depleted by this demonic system and life on Earth, and then you're kind of a zombie or whatever, right? I talk about this quite extensively in some of my videos, not the Journey series, but other videos. But I experienced this, this divine love through the Sajmark system, and I knew that was why I was here. And I didn't know why. Like, I didn't know the specifics because I didn't understand. I hadn't read any of the books, but I just had that experience, right? This is why you're here. This is what you've been waiting for your whole life. It was this, I went to this guy's house. He was a preceptor, and we sat, in a meditative situation. He explained how to do the system. And all of a sudden, the love just swept over me, this, energy, and like he didn't experience what I was experiencing. Like he was kind of shocked, like, oh, Like I was having this experience. Like he hadn't had any of these experiences. He had been doing it for like 20 years, right? He was a good preceptor, but wasn't. He didn't have some of these experiences that other people had, even when he was giving these sittings, right? So it was a unique thing for me, and it was transformational. And I was like, this is why I'm here. This is what I'm supposed to do, And there's a like a moment of, there was just a great time for me. Those early years doing the Sajmarg meditation. Then I started reading the books and understanding the process here that your soul is working to merge back in the source. Like everything wants to return to the source. That your soul goes out to the periphery of its existence and then it wants to go back to the center. That's how all things work. You think about the rain cycle, the water gets pulled up from the ocean and is, forms clouds and goes, deep inland and rains, and then the water eventually works its way back through creeks and streams and rivers to the ocean itself, right? That's how all things, that's the water cycle. Like an example of something coming from the source, being being distance from the source and then going back to the source itself. And so, I had my material life, which is a big part of the Sajmark system, where in many spiritual organizations and practices, you neglect your spiritual life. You have all these monks and they have sannyasis in India who don't work, they don't contribute, they don't have families. And they're basically beggars who become spiritual people, but they're only focused on their spiritual life and they don't do anything for the material world. And that's not how Sajmarg operates, that you're supposed to have a balance between the spiritual wing and the material wing. Most people now have all their energy in their material wing and they have nothing in their spiritual. They do nothing spiritual. But there's also people who do just spiritual things that have no material life. And the example was given by one of the masters of the system of like an eagle or a vulture or one of these birds of prey that soars on the wind currents. And if it dips its wing, if one of its wings is dipped or not in balance, not in line with the other wing, one wing goes up, one wing goes down. They go in circles. You can see them spinning around. That's how they turn, by dipping one of their wings. And so to fly straight on your path, you need both wings to be aligned. You need a material wing and a spiritual wing, which I thought was very interesting. That very simple but very profound. But I embarked in this spiritual journey, and I got into the Sajmark practice. I went to gatherings, went to India. I met the master of the system, who was an example of somebody who had achieved the goal that we were all working towards. And there are a lot of great people, a lot of devoted, selfless people who volunteered their time, contributed their money, and worked tirelessly, to, especially in the Indian culture, where they would drive 4 or 5 hours just to give somebody a sitting. Like a preceptor drove, hours to meet people. Like we didn't have a preceptor where I lived in Virginia, and they would come from Washington, D.C., that were 5 hours away, and, North Carolina and things like this. They would drive hours and hours, like just, devoted service. They were just servants to God and working for the system. And they were humble, like just really humble. They weren't doing it because they wanted to be aggrandized. Oftentimes they were just people you wouldn't even notice doing the work, like in a gathering, making sure that everyone was fed and, cooking food or whatever it might be. Like there were just these selfless people working in obscurity where nobody knew the work they were doing, practically, unless you just noticed them. And they weren't drawing attention to themselves. They weren't doing so like everyone thought how great they were and they brag about all the work they were doing. They would just put in the work without expecting any sort of pats on the back or, they were working for their spiritual goals. And in the Sajmark system, you get experiences. You get like little, boosts and experiences, little, whatever they are along the path. But with all spiritual and religious pursuits, a lot of it is stuff you're not going to know till after you die. Like it's, like religions will promise something that you don't know whether it's true or not until you die. Like, like you're taking their word for it. And Sajmarg, it's not that. You get to experience things like in this life, a spiritual experience through the meditation. But still, a lot of the work that you do is for not only after you die, but for the future of humanity, right? Like you're moving things forward, and what you're participating in is a spiritual evolution that all people will rise up to a higher level. And you can't see that. Like that's stuff that you can see, certain people will say in comments that they have had transformational experiences because of my videos. And that's, I don't attribute that to me, because whatever I do here in terms of, the combination of me and the divinity, right? Working with divinity, we all have divinity within us. That the stuff that comes through me that's divine is far superior to my, my limited ego and my personality, right? Like the best work that's done in my YouTube channel is done by God. And so there's people experience God through my channel, and I don't think, oh, wow, I did a great job, or, people will leave compliments and, transformational, things, how it's helped them. And it's good for me to know, but I don't think of it as me. Like I don't, pat myself on the back. I mean, I put in the work and yeah, I participate, but, I know that God is the real doer, which is a stage on the spiritual path where you realize God is doing everything. And, as I've gotten older, it's more and more like that for me. Like I don't have those fantasies and dreams about being successful and everybody seeing how great I am or whatever it is. Like things that I thought about as a kid, I don't think about it that way. I just, put in the work with faith that there's, some kind of outcome coming. I was told early on by the third master of the system that, we don't work for results. We work for God. The work is ours and the results are his. And that was a, wonderful, blessing for me, that you just, you do the work and you wake up and you know what your duties are, you know what you're supposed to do, and you do it, and you don't worry about the results, right? Like that, scene from A Field of Dreams where the Kevin Costner character's like, what's in it for me? Like at the end of the movie, he built the field, he did all these things. He's like, what am I getting out of this? Like, everyone else is getting something, and he's like, you did it so you could get so, the Ray Liotta character's like, why did you do it? Joe Johnson or whatever, Joe Jackson. I don't know. Shoeless Joe Jackson is that his name. Says, is that why you did it, for something? You wanted to get something out of this, And the idea in Sajmarg, the reward for work is more work. And so, I just keep on plugging in and doing what I'm supposed to do, in a way where I, don't get overwhelmed or drained or bitter or, resentful, just taking on too much and, whatever, other people's problems and things like that. Just doing the work that's assigned to me, making these videos, doing the stuff on the homestead. And, those are the things, right? Doing things with my wife, joint goals that we have and, work we're doing to create a future for ourselves, things like this. And then ultimately leaving something behind for other people, right? Leaving the world a better place. That's another goal of Sajmark system. But a lot of it, you can't know. Like you don't know how, it's not a part of the material experience. The real, results of the work. They happen on an etheric level, which we can get in touch with and we can experience, but we're not there. We're limited being in a physical body. We have our dream world and our meditative world, and we can experience the so-called brighter world here on planet Earth. And so as I've gotten older, just getting up and not thinking about the results, not, like, oh, wow, what if I get 1 million subscribers and how would that would be, or 10 million, or everybody, things like that. Like not fantasizing about, something having a glorious, some sort of a, whatever that would be, right? Like I just get up and I, crank out the videos and I just do the work that's in front of me and I don't think about, all these things. Like I have to do something to, because YouTube is working against me and so many other people now, and all of it, that I have to do things to, keep the, to make enough money off, it's a job as well, right? All these things. But for the most part, it's just, getting up and knowing what I have to do and doing it and not worrying about the results and not, dreaming about this outcome or that outcome or, in some material way, just doing what's supposed to be done. Um, and that's been, I mean, this is the happiest part of my life, just being able to, have something to do, have a purpose and goal, and go ahead and do it, every day, and be a cog in the wheel, and just not think about the other things, whatever those other things might be in the material world, and whatever. I mean, I'm just content to do what I'm supposed to do. But in that, in terms of the Savjorg meditation, Master Charji, you had all these saintly people who were working hard for the mission, and the master was the best of us. He was a person who worked harder than anybody else, and he was more devoted than anybody else, and he was the best conduit for this energy to flow through. And everything he touched, whether it was material or spiritual, was successful. The guy was just a success on every level. Building ashrams, bringing new people in, helping them connect to God, and just, growing an organization and working tirelessly to do it. And just propping everybody else up, going to places. He'd come to America and, hundreds of more people would start the meditation and, they'd fade away and, some would fade away, some would stick. And, a year later he'd come back and it was the same thing. And before he got there, was all this energy, enthusiasm, but just, making the world a better place. And, he was somebody I guess we all probably took for granted because when he died, he left behind a dud, like a guy who ended up being a complete dud, who, failed. And I mean, someone who was much better before Master Chargy died. Somebody who was really good, a good preceptor, a good person, but he just didn't rise up and fulfill the same role and do what Chargy was doing. But eventually just became almost like an anti-master, not almost, but like an anti-master, like now like a cult leader. And, all these people who are saintly people, good people, they haven't been able to deal with it. It was an unexpected turn of events that none of us were prepared for. And they haven't been able to deal with it. They just haven't been able to figure it out, or they're in denial, whatever it might be. And the system has more or less collapsed. I've, left the what's now called the Heartfulness organization. It's a sham. And, because there's no transmission flowing, which is the whole reason for the, transmission and cleaning, cleaning your spiritual, the grossness from your system and transmitting this divine energy and helping people to elevate. And these people who are, great souls, saints and higher developed souls, have failed this challenge. I mean, as far as I can tell. I can't speak for all of them, but the way I see it, they've failed this challenge. They haven't been able to figure out what to do with a dud of a master who has, hijacked this whole organization for his own purposes. And just a failure. Like, he's not even good at it. Like, he's sort of a screw up on top of it. He's no criminal mastermind. He just does stupid things and is failing. Everything he does is a failure. Like, he just, and then exaggerates the results and things. And I talk about this extensively in the Journey series. But I, was watching this Zoom call and I was seeing some of these people. And some of them were people with big egos, people I didn't like that, I could see where they would get corrupted very easily because they had dreams of, self-importance and ambition and things like this. And those people, sure. But there were other people. There's a guy I talked to who was a real great preceptor. And he was just, I talked to him fairly recently. And I had heard great things about him as a preceptor. And, he was kind of confused about what was going on. And he kind of knew things were bad. And at some point I talked to him, he said, I'm just going to ignore it because thinking about these things is wrecking my spiritual condition. And so he chose just to, like people in the truth community who see the truth for a little while and it's too much for them and they stick their head back in the sand. So I saw this guy on this Zoom call with Dodgy, the master of the system who's failed. And he's smiling and, whatever. Um, this guy's smiling. And I don't know how he could be smiling. Like it was, embarrassingly bad performance by Dodgy. And there's no enthusiasm. People have sort of just walked away and, threw their hands up in the air. Some of them, I don't know. But there hasn't been what I consider a competent response from all these people. And like I said, many of them I would say were more evolved than me, and they were better, more devoted than me, and more into it, more service oriented, better personalities, more caring of other people, and the whole thing. But they failed. They failed worse than I have. I don't believe I failed this test personally because I've done what I can doing the gratefulness meditation to keep this alive. Whatever I can contribute to keep the energy alive, the transmission alive, and the being a conduit, and it's had an effect on people. But it's limited, but because of me seeing these people, a lot of them good people, spiritually oriented people, fail. And Daji himself was a higher developed soul. He had potential. Like he could have been a good master. Like he, whatever, some scars he had, whatever character faults he had, because he could have rose above them, but he didn't. And I'm not saying I would because I don't think I would. Whatever. I don't care to. Like I don't care enough about people in God. Whatever. I'm limited. But he failed, and he was given this job, and he didn't do it. And the people who were there, couldn't muster up a response to this. They haven't been able to come up with a solution, connect to God, and figure out what to do. It's really been pathetic, right? And I'm saying this because these people, I believe to be legitimate saints and higher developed souls that their sole purpose was come down and contribute to this movement. And if they're going to fail, what about all the first timers? People who maybe were an animal in a previous existence, or this is a high, it's a jump up to the human condition. They're not coming down from a higher level of spiritual attainment. They're not coming down from previous lives, or they don't have a history of previous lives of spiritual evolution and going through the process. There's a lot of just first timers, and people don't have the ability for abstract thought, and all the people like you see at Walmart or whatever it is, right? You go through the masses of people who are low consciousness, low IQs, low everything. What are those people are supposed to do? Like if the best of the best fail, I was told by various people that I would that the number of saints, like famous spiritual beings from other traditions that are a part of the Sajmark system, would astound you, right? That's something that Charji said. Like all these people were, like Master Charji was St. Paul in a past life, and the second master Babaji was, Patanjali in a past life, a highly developed spiritual yogic saint. And then all these other people were part of that. Like, it doesn't mean that much to people who are invested in material life and look up to celebrities and kings and famous people and politicians and people with power. But there's been highly developed spiritual beings that have had success stories here on planet Earth, and they were incarnating to be a part of this organization. And as of now, it looks like a gigantic failure. I mean, again, this is my limited view and a view that's coming from planet Earth, but with the master collapsing and falling and becoming a deviant in many ways. And then these highly developed souls that were spiritually oriented and still are in different ways, not being able to solve this equation, not being able to figure things out, and make something of a bad situation. Is like they were only capable of doing good work when they had a higher developed master running the system. They can't do it on their own. Like they can't muster up a response on their own and connect to God directly and figure things out on a higher level to make sure that this work survives this debacle of the current master of the system. And so if they're going to fail, and they failed, and I see what else is going on with humanity. To me, there isn't much of a chance. Like, if saints fail, then what about the sinners? Like, what are sinners going to do if saints fail? What are the lowly people going to do? The people who are, newbies and just beginners here on planet Earth going to do? And all the, materialistic people that are there. And so I don't have much hope for humanity, just based in that and my overall experience. Of course, hope is unimportant. Like, hope keeps you going. I don't need hope. Like, I guess faith is better, and I have faith, and at least in terms of doing what I'm supposed to do and getting out of it whatever I get out of it on a spiritual level. Not to think about it like as a materialistic person. What am I getting out of it, right? But I'm moving forward by continuing the work that I was supposed to do, regardless of how bleak it looks and regardless of how hopeless it looks. At least I'm moving forward personally. Like, I'm having my own spiritual experiences and my own evolution by continuing to just, go in there and punch the clock every day and continuing to fulfill my role every day. You see these movies where they're pre-apocalyptic, where people know that something's going to happen. There was one I talked about in Australia. It was kind of a good movie. And then a few other movies. I can't remember all their names, but where the end of life on Earth is inevitable. And people just start saying, all right, I'm not going to go to my job and all these things, which, that makes sense if your job sucks. But, until the system, like any day that the world could just blow up. Like some day is the day before all human life ceased to exist here, right? Like, there's going to be a day where human life is here, and there's going to be a day where human life isn't here, where human life ceased to exist on this planet. There might be a million years, it might be tomorrow. And the day before, you're still supposed to do what you're supposed to do. The day before you die, like just even more, like a more realistic idea. I mean, realistic and, there's going to be people, maybe some of them listening to this video, and tomorrow they're not going to be here, right? They're going to be, they're going to leave their body and go on to somewhere else. And so, there are people like that today is their last day. This is their last hour. And there'd be this idea, that movie Bucket List, and where you're going to go do things that you never got to do, or you're going to go experience it or have fun or whatever, right? But ultimately, every day you want to just keep on doing what you're supposed to do. Stay true to your spiritual path. You've been given an assignment. You've been given whatever gifts and abilities that you're supposed to, impart to other people on the planet. Everyone has some role to play here. And you fulfill that role and you keep on doing it, even in the face of everyone else quitting or everyone else collapsing or the system collapsing. You continue to fulfill what you're supposed to do. At some point, you might need to pivot, right? You might, all right, that part's over. The internet's gone down, so why should I? I'm not going to just be sitting here talking to myself. There's no more, viewers. There's no more, I mean, let's say there's no viewers. I was making videos for 0 viewers, and YouTube had so hidden my channel and all these things, or there's just whatever it is. Then there'd be no reason for me to keep on doing this. I would, do something else. But up until that point, and there's still some reason to keep on going with this, I'll go, as long as it's, God's will. And just to wrap this thing up, and I want to switch over to, my other stuff that I'm going to do here. And I want to cover, Aaron Rodgers. There's this prediction that somebody had, like I said, a couple hours before the thing. And then Dr. Berg's being shadow banned and these things. Someone who's very popular on YouTube, and it's happened to more and more people. And I think I'll get to a few other things here on my Pockets of the Future video, and then, the Journey series will go in a different direction. But just to wrap this part up, I hurt my back, and I haven't hurt it in a while. And, I overstrained it doing some work and whatever. And then usually what happens is it's fine, and then 3 days later, something happens. And then it was sore, and then I picked something up, and then that sort of, hurt it worse. But now it's, like I'm probably about 80% better. And I have these stretches that I do that are for the psoas muscle. I got this little device too, a psorite that helps stimulate release points on the psoas muscle. And I do these stretches. One I learned from Dr. Berg, and then another one somebody sent me, a viewer, and they're really great for getting my back into shape and stretching out the psoas muscle. And my wife and I do the Dr. Berg one when we're walking because you can do it standing. It's easier to do. But then we stop doing it. Like, if one of our backs is sore, or, we're in the car all day or something on a trip, and then we pay more attention to it. But, it's easier to do all these things when you're experiencing poor health. It's easier to do these maintenance things and, these things do these things that fix a acute condition, as opposed to doing things that will maintain something and keep you from having a back problem altogether, right? Like just doing some stretches, yogic stretches, whatever they are, and doing things like that just to prevent, what I'm having, which was, 3 or 4 days of not as good, like I couldn't do as much and I had to, I'm limited. I can't really do much work outside and my energy levels affected and all these things. And so, that's the problem with human life. Like things that are good for you, when you need them, you'll do them. But when things are going good, you forget about them. And when things are going good, that's when you should worry the most. When things are going bad, you're aware of it, and you're forced to adjust yourself and do things in a different way. But when people have success, that's a time when you should be more worried about anything than, I don't know. Worry is I don't like to worry. I don't think being worried is a positive way of saying this, but continue on with doing the things that are important to do and are that are maintenance things for either your health or your spiritual condition or whatever. Because success can ruin people, right? Success can, bring people to have some sort of spiritual fall. Success can take people away from the good habits and things they do to reach the goal that they've reached, especially on the spiritual level, where you work real hard for spiritual evolution and then you get it and you start, patting yourself on the back and becoming egotistical and thinking you're the doer and, I don't need you, God, right? I talked about that movie, The End. My dad described it to me and I went and watched it. This Burt Reynolds was diagnosed with terminal cancer or something, and he goes out to swim into the ocean and kill himself, and he has a change of heart. And he says, God, I'll give you everything I own if you help me get back to shore, because he's tired and he doesn't think he can make it. As he gets closer, he said, God, I'm definitely going to give you that 50%. And then by the time he gets on the beach, he says, I'll give you 10%, I'm definitely going to give you that 10% I promised you, right? It was 100% when he was almost dying, and then as he, started doing more of it, and God helped him get to the shore, he cut God's cut down to 10%. But when things are going poorly, people think about God, and I guess that's one of the good things that is going to happen with the collapse of our civilization, is that you have to, be more self-reliant on connecting to God, and this is also probably the good thing that happened in the Sajmarg system with the collapse of the system, that people were so used to, Master Chargy doing everything. There's this element where you'd have to take more personal responsibility. And so, like, the advantage of a collapsing civilization and a time of uncertainty is that you think about God a lot more. And you realize that, you can't control things, and, like, you stop thinking of yourself as the doer. That you can't do anything without God. And so I'm going to wrap this voiceover up here and take this in 2 different directions on the different videos I'm making. And, that's it for this part. Okay, let's get to it here. I've been procrastinating since I did the voiceover. It's 11:30. This is David Zaslav, CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery. I guess what's that? The Discovery Channel. Vows to fight to the end. Can't find that. So anyways, he's this guy, the CEO of something, Warner's Brothers Discovery. Let's look that up real quick. Our company, Warner Brothers Discovery, is leading global media and entertainment company that creates and distributes the world's most differentiated and complete portfolio of content and brands across television, film, and streaming. So, some of the things he has here is Adult Swim, Turner Classic, Cartoon Network, Animal Planet, Science Channel, Warner Brothers Films, Television. So, I guess this is maybe the CEO of Warner Brothers. CNN, I guess he's responsible for CNN and Discovery, Max, and these other things. So there's that. And he allegedly posted this. Aaron Rodgers is going to tear his Achilles on a rain-drenched MetaLife turf in 2.5 hours. And so I can't verify this. There's another post here. 40-year-old QB on the rain-drenched turf against the best team in football. What could go wrong, am I right? This might have been his original post, but this is his account now. It's suspended, and so I don't know if he was hacked. I don't know if this post is real. It's been passed around the internets and the truth community. So this just, I used to care about things like this, and I just don't. I used to, focus more on these things, and I pursue them. I go down the rabbit hole, and I have very little interest in it. If this post is real, and it looks like it's probably not, the question would be, did that mean he was able to predict the future and Aaron Rodgers did get hurt? That it's all scripted and Aaron Rodgers isn't really hurt, it was just an act? Or something else, like he just randomly posted this, and he got it right coincidentally. There's a lot going on there, given the anniversary that it was, given that it was New York, given the hype, given all the aspects of what happened there. Certainly, it could easily be scripted. Also, it could also be a, warning sign kind of thing. I don't know. But let's move on to this. So there is a new Netflix trailer for something called The Rebel Moon, which again has a female character who looks like she's about 5'2", 100 pounds, 110 pounds, and she is beating men up. But then this was part of it. These guys in these masks with the Illuminati eye, the Eye of Horus, and then later on comes back up here at the end of the thing here. They have these guys playing the violin here. This is the Eye of Horus. A little bit different with the mask that they were wearing. But this seems to be the symbol for the Empire here. There's, going back 1 second here. There's a woman who's touching a robot here. And then goes to the Eye of Horus, these guys with violins. And then this one. And so, that happened. It's inconclusive, or, there's something here, but, what it is, nobody really knows. I'll get more into this at the end of this video. Dr. Berg gets censored. And so what he's saying is that they've changed the algorithm, so if you search something like, the keto diet, that his videos don't come up. We can do that here, just take a look at it. The keto diet, and I'm searching here, and there's nothing here on Dr. Berg. He has one of the most prolific sites, and I've watched a number of his videos, and his video doesn't come up here, right? And so he's talked about how they've changed the algorithms. They're not necessarily banning people or deleting their videos, but they're making them impossible to find. Now, YouTube recommended this video to me today. Dr. Berg is allegedly a Scientologist, and there's some controversy around him, but his videos have helped me with my health. Most recently, he posted a video about Bieberine, which has helped me lose weight. Again, I'm not recommending anything here. I don't do that health-wise or anything else. But, I've lost about 10 pounds since taking it. It's helped me, I think, process sugars and It's helped me with being like, I'm not as hungry. It's just helped me in general. Other things that he's recommended: a stretch for my, a stretch my wife and I do for our psoas muscle. There's a lot of things that I've benefited from him, and other people like him. And I look for alternative health because allopathic medicine doesn't work for me. Again, not recommending anything, but and they're now making it impossible for you to find allopathic results, non-allopathic results. And they're, doing the recommended channels, and they're pushing everybody towards mainstream medicine. And, they're doing this across the board. YouTube is, somebody sent me a video of some guys like English, and he has sort of a standard channel, and they've made it so he can't make money on YouTube videos. And he's like got a channel that has been around for a very long time. He probably gets about, on this video, he got like 20,000 views, so it's not like a big popular channel. But he says a lot of people are experiencing this where YouTube categorizes their channel in a way that they won't run, they'll run some ads, but not a lot of ads. There's like he receives something, there's a statement on top of his channel that it's being placed in this category. Of course, I've seen my revenue reduced and things like this. But we've entered an era where they're just going to get rid of all of this stuff, like all the alternative stuff. And I'll get into that. We'll get back to that in a moment here.
Putin would have never gone into Ukraine, but that was just on my relationship with him, my personality over his. Would have never gone. I used to speak to him. It was the apple of his eye, but I said, don't ever do it. And it was, tough stuff there, but he would have never done it.
Wondering who says that? Apple of my eye? Now you know. Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in New York.
She's just maybe the most ghoulish person on the news.
Being the apple of Vladimir Putin's eye is not really something that makes up a badge of honor for anyone here in the United States. But it,
I would put a witch hat on her, and I don't have time to do that. But like, she had a witch hat on her, and someday I'll do that, but
is for the ex-president Donald Trump, who's probably delighted by the newest comments coming from the Russian leader currently accused of carrying out heinous war crimes in Ukraine.
Heinous war crimes.
Right.
This is when America has justified their use of giving depleted uranium shells to the Ukrainians, which also hurts Ukrainians because they're firing those shells in their own country. And so these radioactive shells and the fallout from them is going to be in the Ukraine, right? And so, like, these are war crimes against your own people. Americans are doing this using the Ukraine. Biden, I mean, it's just gotten so greasy. And then this, right?
Echoing Donald Trump's attacks against those holding him to account, Vladimir Putin called the criminal indictments against Trump a, quote, persecution of a political rival for political motives. Putin, speaking at an economic forum earlier today in Russia, then went full Tucker Carlson, saying this, quote, this shows the whole rottenness of the American political system, which cannot claim to teach others about democracy. They simply expose their domestic problems. And in that sense, if they're trying to compete with us on something, then it shows who we're competing with. All of which was likely music to Trump's ears. Now, when Putin first invaded Ukraine...
Okay, we know where this is going.
Time for you to include Ukraine aid as part of the CR at the end of the month.
Look, Leader McConnell and I have a very similar view on this. We think Ukraine aid is extremely important.
Yeah, it is. Come on, this guy who would, and who's this wonderful specimen here?
We're going to do everything we can to do it. My guess is a majority in the House, if you just had a vote on the floor of the House, would support Ukraine aid, probably even a majority of Republican House members, although I haven't counted those. And so we're going to push very hard for Ukraine aid because, look, Ukraine is struggling. They need the help. They're making some progress. It would be really wrong.
Americans don't want that. Americans don't want to give more money to Ukraine. And Ukraine's being set up like it's a bad thing over there. It's like a proxy war.
To shut that aid off just at a time when they're making some progress. Yes.
Mr. Schumer, on Iran, what's your reaction to the White House's deal with the Iranian government to get these American hostages back in exchange for $6 billion?
Well, I don't know the details, so I couldn't really comment at much length. We all know the Iranian government causes real problems throughout the Middle East and even the world.
Okay, so the Republicans are characterizing this as Joe Biden giving the the Iranians $6 billion, but that's not true. This is money that is the Iranians that's locked up in escrow that they got from oil sales. So it's money they earned that, from their exporting of oil that international America or whatever is keeping them from having. So this isn't what they're saying it is, right? Republicans are politicizing this. But, the whole thing's a mess. Like just, everything's so corrupt and so deceptive. Everything just sucks so bad right now because they suck so bad. Like the people running the system and these, their cronies here, these political hacks and shills, they're just so they're not hiding it anymore. They've come out and gone full ghoul. But here's the big ones that I want to get to. JoJo Magoo saying this.
MasterAssistance.gov to register assistance. Earlier this week, I visited FEMA headquarters in Washington to thank the emergency responding personnel who are working 24/7 here in Florida and throughout
Look at Jill here.
the Southwest, Southeast, and in Maui and Hawaii. I want to reiterate that appreciation today. I also convened my entire cabinet as part of a whole of government response. And that response is to increase the number and intensity of the extreme weather events and be wary we're going to use all the resources available to the government to do it.
Yeah, he just said that. This is a meme. His response is to increase. Well, let's let him say it again.
Response. And that response is to increase the number and intensity of the extreme weather events and be wary we're going to use all the resources available to the government to do it.
All the resources of the government to increase extreme weather events. You heard it straight from the horse's mouth here. Then he goes on to climate change here.
Nobody can deny the impact of climate crisis. Nobody intelligent can deny the impact of the climate crisis anymore.
And so you're an intelligent person, are you saying?
Just look around the nation and the world for that matter. Historic floods, intense droughts, extreme heat, deadly wildfires.
Deadly wildfires.
Wildfires that have caused serious damage like we've never seen before. Just since being president, in 2.5 years, I've flown over more land burned to the ground as a consequence of wildfires than occupy the entire land of the state of Maryland.
He's seen it.
From down in New Mexico and Alabama all up into Montana and around. It's been devastating.
It's been very devastating. Poor Joe.
Folks, when I took office, I directed my team to raise our game in how to lead and coordinate our response to natural disasters. I met people here today that are, and when they need our help the most, is the reason why we've done it. Just look around this community every other.
Okay, it's pretty bad in the beginning too. I might leave this up and go through it again. It's just like he's gone. Like they're sticking him up there and they just don't care. They don't care if he just poops his pants and he vomits word solid out of his ghoul hole. That's completely we can't understand what that's. Half the time you don't understand what he's saying, and the other half of the time he's making gaffes and saying things he shouldn't. But they're just going to roll him out there. Then this happened.
Ground Zero in New York. And I remember standing there the next day and looking at the building. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell. It looked so devastating because from where you could stand.
Apparently he wasn't at he wasn't there. He didn't go to Ground Zero. He was in the Senate looking at the Senate building. Maybe that's what you were seeing when you're seeing the gates of hell. So Fetterman is back with his porn stash. They've been hiding him, but somehow they got him here.
or has said he's going to.
Oh my God, really? Oh my gosh, it's devastating. Ooh, don't do it. Please don't do it.
There's a guy who just doesn't have the ability to self-perceive. He was talking about Biden being impeached. Like, these are a couple of memes just waiting to happen. I got to turn into memes and even short videos. Maybe I'll do a Fetterman smash with this one. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I'm procrastinating a lot. Okay, as it turns out, I have the actual audio, which I often get just for these Fetterman videos. Fetterman have porn stash. Ooh, they don't like Fetterman porn stash. Fetterman witch wife to nut him, but give him spell. Ooga booga, ooga booga. I'm going to wrap this thing up. It's going to be long with the voiceover and all the rest of it. I've reconciled what's going on in the world to realizing that you can have truth, you can have God, or you could have your lifestyle. But you can't have both. If you pursue truth and in a way that's beyond just, the truth community has become just everybody blaming everything on the controllers and say they control everything and feeling helpless and just doing the same thing over and over again and repeating these dives into the rabbit hole with no results. There'll be a lot of people saying that the Aaron Rodgers thing is fake. And then a lot of people saying it's real or this or that. And there'll be all these arguments and all this, whatever. And nobody can prove anything. Nobody can, do anything, even if something is admitted to. Like, if what Biden said about the extreme weather events was, an admission or a Freudian slip and not just a gaffe, there's no way to, actually do anything about it. Even if he came out and said, yeah, we did it. We were doing all these things. Nobody would, bat an eye, right? Nothing would happen. And if it did happen, it would bring down the system. And so we could have truth. We can have the truth come to light. We can have the truth be the official story. That means that the system has to go. And I've said this over and over again. You can't have both. You can't have truth and your lifestyle. You have to choose one or the other. And, most people in truth community are straddling the fence. They're straddling the face. They're straddling the fence between wanting the truth but not wanting to change and not wanting to give up their lifestyle. And, that is whatever it is. And, I don't know what each person should do in any circumstance. Like, for me, I know the system will fall in its own accord. And so during this time, I'm going to take advantage of it and work, mostly on connecting to God, but also on building skills and doing something in case there is some sort of change. And maybe, me and my family can adapt. Maybe we can't, whatever. We'll give it a shot, right? And just, doing what I can do. Anything can be taken away in a moment's notice. And, we live in, very... think about if the Aaron Rodgers thing is completely fake, that it's an act, and that for 8 months or so they created this narrative and the whole Hard Knocks thing, and everyone in the sports world, the people in New York City were waiting for his debut, and then they just shut it out, right? If they did that on purpose, or they were able to create the injury without, they were able to, cast some sort of a spell on him or whatever, jinx him, whatever that was happening there. That this was, or, this is either a psychological operation that's completely staged and acted, or there's some other dark forces at play, or it's just the consequences of, everything. Like, it's a warning sign from God. Whatever way you want to take something like that. It's a lot of work for, kind of a weird, unsatisfying ending to a story. But if that's a psychological operation, it's all acted and staged, what are they doing, right? Like, that's the levels that they're putting in. If everything is so controlled and acted and staged, everything in the official story, which is, I think about it that way sometimes, and then I think about it differently at other times. But if that's what's happening, they're pretty desperate, right? They're rolling out all this, they're rolling out all the stops, all the, they're going for it because, that means that they got to do extraordinary work to keep everybody engaged with the system and prop the system up because it's, on the verge of failing. And that's where we are. Like, it's desperate times. Whether, if that's the case or there's, it's just everything's collapsing around us. Bunch of things to get to for by tomorrow. Hollywood celebrity dropping like flies that are bizarre. And, everything is like so intense. There's something big happening like every week, multiple times a month. There's big stories and then, littler stories. And then just like the prolongated drama of Trump and, the division within the country and everything falling out and collapsing and things like this. Everyone's become numb to the big stories. Either they don't believe them or there'll be something else that replaces it in a week or so. And so there's almost no reaction from the people. There's no change. There's no, moments where people say, maybe I better start doing something else. And even in the truth community, everyone just sort of goes along and I think it's just waiting for the end to come, right? Like, I think very few people have any real hope in things turning around and, either politically or economically or, health stuff. I mean, it's just like we're going in a direction towards doom, right? Like it just feels like impending doom. And, and I mean, these things are making, like you see Fetterman, you see Biden, you see Trump, like all of this spells impending doom. There's something with Lauren Boebert getting kicked out of Beetlejuice play, which I'll cover tomorrow. Like everything is just about impending doom. And so, when that's the case, then you have really no choice but to throw up your hands and, have faith in God and go in a godly direction because the system itself isn't worth serving anymore. The system isn't worth believing in. The system itself is, in a problem and not a solution. And so, the only way to ride through this, this filth, this cesspit, this cesspool, like a cesspool with waves and, current and these things, is to, have faith in God and serve God and, have some sort of, purpose in that direction where you're moving forward spiritually and you're part of a future solution that doesn't exist now, but will be, the seeds are there, the pockets of the future are there for, something in a post-apocalyptic situation. Anyways, we're all doomed. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful. So I took a long nap. I did the whatever you're seeing in this video here, and the ScreenFlow stuff. And I was going to edit it and get the video done early. And, I've been so tired. And I was thinking maybe, my back and being tired is related to whatever this COVID stuff is. I don't feel sick. And, I doubt I would test positive for whatever. I don't do any of that stuff anyhow. But it has such weird symptoms, the thing. And I just, it was like 11 o'clock and I slept pretty late. And I did the voiceover, for both videos. This one in the Journey series, the 121st Journey series. And then I completed, the other portion of this video. And then I did the voiceover before this, and I'm going to add this one at the end. And, I got so tired. And I took a nap, and I woke up, and I couldn't move. I was just laying there, and I went back to sleep, which almost never happens. And then, I went for a walk with my dogs, and I came back and I had these ideas. I already did a similar voiceover to what I'm going to do here on the Journey series. But I wonder if this thing, that whatever they've inflicted on us, and I don't know if it's actually contagious or just something that lives in our system and, it's always going to come back around during the fall and early winter and things like this. Whatever. I feel fine and I feel strong, but I'm just so tired. But anyways, I was thinking about this in terms of the spiritual organization with Daji and the people that were around Master Chargy. But what I was saying about, my YouTube channel, and I thought, well, I'll add this to this video. When YouTube first came out, and there was this thing called, that ended up being the onset of the truth community. Back in the beginning, I don't want to say it was pure. Of course, Alex Jones made up about 60% of the truth community. Like he was he was the one that was funded. He was the one that was he was a shill for the whatever it was. But he had a quality show back then, like in terms of the guests he had. And there's a lot of things he did that was, not good. But it was not nearly as bad as he became later on. He was more reasonable, and his shows had better quality. And it was a little bit more grassroots. And then all the other people who were a part of the truth community, they got things wrong and they had their own issues. But it was much better than it is now. And as it grew, it became worse and worse. And, one of the reasons is the people who make money on something don't have the creative energy or the foresight or the vision to be in the very beginning of it. Like people who, there's people trading Bitcoin. I remember when Bitcoin was like 10 cents a piece. Like I could have bought, like I didn't know and I didn't have the money for it and I didn't even understand what it was. But there was a time when Bitcoin was, like pennies. For a while, it was like a couple of years, and people were using it as a currency and trading amongst themselves, young people and people in the truth community, I think other people on the internet. But, those people probably sold all their coin early on. Maybe it went up to $100, and they thought they made a lot of money. Maybe some of them held on to it. People could have had, tens of thousands of Bitcoins, and they could have been fairly poor, college-age kids. But then it went up to $100, and they were probably like, wow, man, I can make, they never thought it was going to do that, and they never knew it was going to become, all the cryptocurrency stuff. And, there's the people that come in after something's been established, like at the, for the Silicon Valley and the tech bubble. These guys who made the most money were the ones that ran the IPOs, and they came in and they, did these pumps and dumps, and they really didn't ever know how to, they couldn't write a line of code. Many of them knew nothing about what they were selling, but they're just money guys. They, they get involved in a scam. And those guys, were a part of, the missions, Charlie G's inner circle and things in the Sizemore system, and he restrained them, the third master of the Sizemore system, from their tendencies. But once he died, they took over what became Heartfulness. Daji was a part of that. And, you can see what he had to do or what he was doing to keep keep what he was doing pure, which it takes a, tremendous amount of effort. Because every religion, everything that grows from a grassroots situation, it just gets worse and worse over time. It's because there are people who, they just see things as a way to be profitable, a way to aggrandize themselves, whatever that means. And that's what's happened now on the internet. Of course, now there's more restrictions to your ability to, make something grassroots, and money's involved, and, all these other things, right? And they just, take it and they make it into something that's just more marketable. They take the essence out of it, and that just always happens. And that's happened here in the, in terms of the internet, certainly on YouTube and these other social media platforms. And the people that come in they're more and more sucky, right? More and more selfish, more and more, they're not about the essence of the movement is ruined. And that's happened to the truth community long ago. And it just, keeps on getting worse. And, it just becomes more and more division, more and more subgroups, more and more lacking in, I don't know what you would call it, just, diversity of impurity, right? Like instead of, it's just what happened with the Christian religion, where there's, a Baptist, and there's Catholics, and there's various levels of, there's Methodists, and there's, also like now Mormons or whatever it is, right? They have all these groups, each one claiming to be the right one. And, there's the purity of Christ's message has been lost. And what I was saying in my other video, my majority series video, this voiceover I just did, is that I'm more focused on the reaction from the people I knew who knew that the people around Chargy weren't great, and they could have foreshadowed or seen this possibility happening, but at least should be aware of why it happened, because they were involved, right? They were with these people. They saw these people, some of their suckier tendencies and some of these things that they weren't allowed to contaminate the system with because Chargy wouldn't allow them to do it. But now they have. And, there's the middle management, there's Dodgy's fall, there's the people around him, but then there's the other people who, could have acted like come together and said, no, you guys aren't doing this, right? You guys are, they could have been a check and a balance to what was going on. But they just sat on their hands. And so, I focused on the controllers and whatever, the Illuminati, whatever what people wanted to call it, and the, people of the power. But you can't expect those people to change. They're the last people to change. Many of them are so bankrupt and dead and, they're so twisted. They never had a chance. Even though people envy them or they're people that people want to be like that, or they want money, they want power. But then you see these people and you realize, oh, they're so screwed. And they're caught in a web of, power structure and venomous creatures and all these things, right? And so, there's that group. And you can't count on them. And people are always waiting for them to change. And then there's the middle management people and whatever they are, the people who are, the face of this thing, the lower level politicians and, the politicians in general and the various hierarchical gatekeepers and things. And those people aren't going to change either. And so they're a known entity. And chasing them around and constantly catching them and saying, oh, look, we caught you again, and not having a system to exercise some sort of, consequences for that or to change leadership, and wondering why you keep on catching them and they don't ever change, they don't ever, do anything differently. It's because they're incapable of it. So the emphasis has to be on everybody else. And, the sheeple are the sheeple. And so the people in the truth community, for the most part have failed. Just like the people who do the Sajmark, who do heartfulness now, to deal with it. Like, that's what I've said, like I was talking about, we're all doomed in a sense, that there isn't anybody willing to figure it out and do something differently. And, and just break free from all these traps that are there. Going down the rabbit hole constantly in the truth community and trying to figure out what happened to Aaron Rodgers is a waste of your time. Yeah, maybe initially, but after a while, who cares? Like, you're never going to get to the bottom of the rabbit hole. That's why they call it a rabbit hole. You're just digging yourself deeper and deeper into the depravity, and you're getting farther and farther away from the light. And so, why are you doing that? Like, enough. That the people running the system are corrupt and you can't be counted on. And the system itself is collapsing. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do differently? And for the most part, most people don't have an answer for that. They're not willing to change themselves, right? And that's, the biggest issue. People aren't willing to change, whether it's lifestyle behavior or try something new or, get out of their ruts and their, most people don't have that in them. They're too assed out. They're too bankrupt. They're too, worn down. They can barely make it through a day to do any wholesale changes. And so for people who've wondered why I care, I don't care about stuff anymore. Like, it's for me, it's interesting to watch. And other than viewership, other than just watching something, like, it's entertaining and, interesting and, wanting to see how it sort of unfolds. Other than that, like, I just, until something huge happens, and something that's gonna change the system forever. Like, it's the slow erosion of the thing now, and people are losing things and they're taking things away and they're doing their thing or whatever. But they're not the where your focus should be. They don't have any real power. Their power will be taken away. They'll be erased. The people I call the controllers, and then what, right? Like, they're. It's just like a person who's a lame duck president or something. Like, they know how desperate they are because they don't have a backup plan themselves. Like, in terms of survival, they have their things, whatever it is, living in silos, living underground, whatever, bunkers and things like that. But that's not, that's just some pipe dream. Like that's not going to, you know what I mean? That's not for them, right? They're going to be wiped out. This whole level of human behavior has to be eradicated. And it just takes a mere thought from God or some of the, higher developed beings, just some sort of spiritual work that's done. And you could remove a whole power structure and you could yank it out by its roots. But when you do that, the system, that we're all dependent on and the element, the demonic system they created goes with them. Their system goes with them. Like they operate the system. And so when the system goes, they go. And then what? Like, what are you going to do? And if you haven't spent any time thinking about that or preparing yourself in one way or another, then what? Like, what's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen to you, right? I mean, very few people will survive this. Some people will be enlivened by it. Some people, it'll be the best thing ever. Like, they don't know it, and they're not really preparing for it. But it's on some level, it's going to feel better when the system collapses. It's like something that's been holding you down, and you're not even aware of it. And then when it's gone, you realize that you can now flourish and do, what you were meant to do. But very few people are like that. So the rest of us have to prepare and adjust ourselves, especially since the older you get, the more the system has a hold on you. And very few people are doing that, so that's where the real bummer comes in. Because the people who could change won't. Like, there's so many people that can't change. There's so many people who can't adapt. And so you can't ask them for anything because they can't do it. But the ones that can suck or refuse to, see what they need to do. And just, be able to face the truth the way it is. And I see it here all the time. People getting, just obsessed with petty things, and just obsessed with the negative, going down the rabbit hole, like I said. And, instead of focusing on the bigger picture, which is, okay, this system is done. What are we going to do then? Like, what are we going to do next? And, spirituality, connecting to God is the, most important part. And, we'll see what happens with that. I've been doing this now for over 30 years, right? 1993. So this is my 30-year anniversary this past August of doing Saj Marg, and, being a part of that and seeing what's happened with the people that do that, and then just seeing what's happened with the people in the truth community. Right now, there's just not that much, what you could say is the possibility for change. But, things are going to happen, and we're going to see. Like, some of us will see, some of us will have to come back and deal with it, whatever. But, it's just around the corner. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.